Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. These are the countries that make up the BRICS. And as we call them, the acronyms are there to speak for themselves. And it was created so as to give some sort of economic relevance and counter the Western domination. And now they're asking for more membership. They're requesting for more strength. Other countries are joining in, and they're seeking to, get something diverse away from the Western domination, as I said earlier. And members are coming in. Questions are being asked. What is Africa going to benefit from these? And what are the things that Africa will actually see in days to come? Before we dip more into this, let's quickly take a look at these information that has been put together by News Central's Adeshawa Odushoga.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the host, South Africa, will be meeting in Johannesburg's financial district of Sandton for a political and economic-centered summit, alongside over 20 more countries, including Saudi Arabia. Presidents and prime ministers of the member states are attending the summit physically, except Russia's Vladimir Putin, following an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court over the war in Ukraine.
Individual BRICS member states have made it very clear what their positions are, from non-alignment to condemnation of what's happening in Ukraine. But I also think it fundamentally misses the purpose of what BRICS claims to be and what it is defined as, which has got nothing to do with security. It's rather political and economic cooperation.
The summit tends to call for more cooperation among countries in the global south amid the rising discontent over perceived Western dominance of global institutions. Also, South Africa will include the African Continental Free Trade Agreement on the agenda to discuss how member states intend to boost trade and investment with existing bilateral trade agreements.
When you've got actors like India and China, which are some of African countries' largest trading partners in the world, in the room, I think it's definitely important for South Africa and other African countries present, because I know many of them are attending as observer states, to really frame the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as mutually beneficial to existing bilateral and multilateral trade partners.
African countries are now seeking to have a level playing field, in which they can be able to trade at a proper level playing field. They are seeking to be on the table.
One of the top two agendas of the summit is to push for a BRICS reserve currency to take part in international trade and to place a challenge on existing international financial institutions for the benefit of the debt of developing countries, especially in Africa. One big question begging for an answer is the European Union affected by this?
BRICS is starting to show itself as more of a power player, which I think the European Union would be strongly advised to take note of, not in a way that is threatening, but in a way that is, okay, we've got a really powerful group of actors coming together as a collective, expressing collective interests.
There is a possible expansion of the BRICS membership, with over 20 countries applying to join, which includes the world's second biggest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, whose alliance with Russia and China clearly draw attention from the United States and its allies. BRICS portends a vast diversity, with prospective members like Turkey, Algeria, Argentina, among others. Adeshawa Odushoga reporting for News Central.
That's quite a big step, a big one for the BRICS member. And we have currently South African journalist in Johannesburg, Thuso Khumalo. Thuso, thank you for joining us. So let's just quickly go into this. These 5 countries account for 40% of the world's GDP. They account for 60% of the world population. Most of the world resources actually are in some of these countries. And now we're seeing an expansion of Saudi Arabia, UAE, which are one of the biggest oil blocks, national oil, across the world, also showing interest. In fact, their membership is going to start from January 1st, if I'm correct. Argentina also wants to join. Iran, Egypt, and Ethiopia are also showing interest, and other countries are coming in. What are we looking at here?
The expansion of BRICS is something that has been very key in this summit, with experts looking at it closely, saying It is the big thing that BRICS can do. If we look at the other global institutions that have been there, joining has not been as easy as what BRICS has made it to these 6 countries that you just mentioned. So we are looking at a group that want to entrench a culture of inclusiveness, especially at a level of global affairs. Especially, we're looking that there are African countries that are there, that have been put there. And this gives Africa a platform to go out there and speak and be heard, because BRICS is getting to be a force to reckon with. So we are looking at expansion on political matters, on global issues, on trade, and of course, on security issues as well. You are speaking about United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, countries that are also have a muscle as far as economy is concerned. So what happens is that once they are members of BRICS and they are partners with African countries, whatever they get or they have escalate to other echelons of the members of the group.
So quickly, Thuso, what is the BRICS offering these people that they are tuning away? Some who are just non-partisan before, they are not with the EU, they're not with the Western community, but they were not with BRICS before. What is different? What is BRICS offering them that is making everyone jump on? And it seems this is the next big thing.
If you talk to representatives of these countries here in this summit, they will tell you that they've always been longing to belong, not only to belong, but to have a voice when they belong. And their belief is that the current institutions that are there, they are a kind of selective, they are not inclusive enough. But with the BRICS, they've been already told that once they are members, they have got equal shares, they've got equal power, they've got equal voice, and more so when being once they become BRICS members, whatever issues are discussed at a global level, they also have got a same voice like anyone else. The key thing that have driven most of them to come closer is this new development bank by the BRICS, because most of them have been complaining. We heard from speeches even this afternoon from some of the leaders that it is very expensive for them to get finance. But BRICS has already said the BRICS, a new development bank, is open to all the members, even those that are not members. They had presentations from the boss of the bank who said one of the key objectives of that bank is to find out how they can foster and develop infrastructure in Africa. So these are some of the things that are attracting these African countries to say, this is a group that we can belong and benefit and have a voice and make decisions after all.
All right, still speaking about Africa and the interest that African countries have and what they possibly are looking to get. Now, with this addition of new countries like, Ethiopia, Egypt to BRICS Alliance, how will this, reshape the dynamics of South-South cooperation and influence Africa's position within the global economic landscape particularly?
I spoke to one expert, Gideon Chitanga, who said to me, the involvement of these 2 African countries that have been added has been strategic, because we have got Ethiopia up there and we have got Egypt up there and South Africa down in the south. So in other ways, this is a total representation of Africa. And whatever these countries benefit from BRICS or want to drive in BRICS, they've got regions where they're definitely going to be consulting and going there with. So economically, that means with powers like China, India, of course, coming up as one of the fastest growing new markets, it is obvious that these African countries are going to get into that cycle of big boys that are able to trade in big monies. We know exactly that China is having massive investment in Africa. India is the 4th largest trader here in Africa, and even the 5th when it comes to investment in Africa. So they are already in that cycle. It won't be difficult for them to trade easily. With Africa, we've got our free Africa trade area. Something like that will happen because they are now members of BRICS. They are now members, they rub shoulders with countries like Russia, China, the big powers. So when it comes to trade, they are really going to benefit quite a lot.
I'm still going to come to the aspect of if this is actually some sort of on a trap for Africa. But before I go to that, I want to believe that BRICS is some sort of competition as against what the EU would do, because naturally, once the Western want to go against any country, what they would just do is to use the EU or the UN aids and cut aids, because they are this places are these agencies are affiliated with the Western community, and they'll just cut aids and all this kind of thing. But yeah, we want to believe that the BRICS is going to be given something much better. One thing I'm quite particular about is, was there any mention of a unified currency, just as you said, in terms of trade? And there's after the free trade area, was there any talks on having a unified currency, especially for the Western Bloc or for Africans, that whereby it can ease trade and ease some sort of economic, there can be some sort of economic advantages for people within the community?
When this meeting started, it was high on the agenda and in the minds and in the mouth of the experts to say BRICS is muting an idea of starting a BRICS currency. What form is it going to be? What is it going to be? But when the current chair, who has just ended his chairship, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, addressed the media this morning. He said that issue is still on the table, is still being discussed, but they need to further go deep into that. So they've assigned their ministers of finance and the Reserve Bank or central bank governors of these BRICS countries to go and look into a way of strengthening local currencies, putting them at par with each other so that it becomes possible for BRICS countries to trade. Also, they've been given a task to look into putting into place viable financial payment systems that will make it easy for these countries to trade. So as far as a hard currency on that agreement, the agreement has not been made, but BRICS said in the next meeting, they expect their ministers and the central bank governors to report back so that that issue is taken forward into implementation. But the idea that seemed to be entrenched within BRICS leaders is that they want to entrench the use of the local currencies, which means they have to find a way of bringing them at par with each other so that they can easily trade and exchange without any difficulties.
Tusho, I think I will let you go without just quickly. Let's divert a little to this, and it's the affiliation of the controversy around Russia, because this is our big guns in among the BRICS community, and we've seen that even during his speech, what Putin said, and I read in quotes, is about the war in Ukraine. It says, our actions in Ukraine are dictated by only one thing: to stop the war unleashed by the West and their satellites against people living in Donbass. And now they are blaming the West for this. Moving forward, are we not going to be seeing that some actions that might be taken from these big guns we have in BRICS might just be as a way of countering what the Western community is doing, as against really giving development or looking for a way that Africa can benefit and grow in this community?
When we speak about experts, especially we analyze the speech by President Putin, they are saying that those are some of the gray areas that have not been specified. There was an expectation that there would be a voice about what BRICS thinks about what's happening in Ukraine, but there was nothing. In the statement, final statement of the declaration that we got, is that President Cyril Ramaphosa said, as leaders of BRICS, they condemn and they are worried about conflicts across the globe, but not exactly tackling what is happening there. So with some experts now coming to say, these countries that are joining, if the countries like China, the countries like India, the countries like South Africa are not able to do something about what their partner Russia is doing in Ukraine, it simply means these countries that have less power, special from Africa, they will just rubber stamp, because remember, they are there to benefit economically. They are there to benefit, also get the political muscle to get on global issues. They might as well ignore some other human rights issues like we see in Ukraine, like the unjustified war that's happening in Ukraine, just for them to gain. So these are some of the things that some analysts are saying there are gray areas within this association and the additions of members, whether it is because these powerful countries and BRICS, they want rubber stamping from these other smaller countries, but it is yet to be seen But these countries have specified that they go into BRICS in order to empower their economies, in order to empower their people, in order to have a voice on global issues.
All right, thank you so much, Tuso. Before I let you go, one quick question. I want to scale it down a little bit from the entire summit and from the member countries and bring it down to just South Africa and South Africans alone. What do you think the general feeling from South Africans is concerning BRICS? Are they enthusiastic about the future, or is there some level of skepticism, like what my colleague here said, looking at it as just an opposition to Western powers rather than the interest of the country and the African bloc itself? What's the feeling among South Africans, if you can speak on that?
From all along, BRICS was a far away institution for many South Africans, if I can say, but this particular year's, the 15th BRICS Summit, it has generated a lot of interest, because what BRICS has done is that they have created a youth council and, that involves South African youths and young businesses. They have created a business council within BRICS, and that involves a lot of South African business people. And of course, they also had the inauguration of the women in BRICS, and they are also coming in also from South Africa. So there is now starting to be that interest as to what is it in it for us as South Africans that are in BRICS. And of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa, being a member, he has been able to convince the country that BRICS comes not as a competition to the institutions that are already there, but as a body that allows South Africa to sit at the same table, discuss, and more so, South Africa is able also to access finance from the New Development Bank, which is also for the good of the people. So the attitude is briefly and slowly changing, and people now looking at BRICS as one of those bodies that can help and improve their lives.
All right, Tuso Khumalo, thank you so much for joining us all the way from South Africa concerning BRICS Summit. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep our eyes on the summit and see what happens in the future. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go straight to what we'll be expecting in the coming weeks. The BRICS Summit is ending today, no doubt, and it's topmost on some of the things we'll be looking forward to, with so many other countries hoping to join in the BRICS. After that, the U.S. has recently demanded that the Central African Republic set a date for local elections, while also expressing deep reservations about the country's constitutional referendum scheduled for July 30. And lastly, Liberia goes to the polls in October, and of course everyone is calling for peaceful, free and fair election. These are the top stories we'll be looking forward to, and of course looking forward to the outcome. And yes, I can't but mention that we're also hoping to get the results of the Zimbabwe election that we talked about.
I was waiting for you to talk about that. Before you go, Nia, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Do you think Nigeria should join BRICS?
Well, now, Nigeria is currently, they attended, but they didn't officially say they want to be members. But the truth is, I feel it's a little bit delicate at this time, because there are a lot of affiliations Nigeria still has with the Western community. So they need to really try to understand where they stand and see if it's worth it to actually say, okay, you know what, we're cutting ties with, because you can't do both. Of course. We're cutting ties with the Western Bloc and see, and because of the controversy, as I said, about some of the major community leaders in BRICS, they might still be having a lot of skepticism.
Very true.
So I'm not sure they'll be joining anytime soon.
I mean, what BRICS promises, and from what he said, it's quite enticing.
It's that's why I said I don't know, it might be an honey trap, but the truth is, you're giving me, it's like giving someone free access. Okay, you know what? Be partners with me. This is, you get shares out of it. We are going to be using your resources, but of course you get something out of it as well. You have a voice, you have stands, you have all these things, and these are things they're not getting from the Western community.
Very, very true. Well, we'll wait and see eventually. As we always say, only time will tell.
Right?